It's done. It's finally done. This is my investigational report on Angel Island Immigration Station. I was just there, spending a whole day. Last year, Angel Island was erected. And soon after that, there has been complaints and news within the Chinese community that the Chinese immigrants there are being treated unfairly and unjustly. So the Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Chinese 6 companies petitioned to President William Howard Taft for a change. And as a result, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the San Francisco Downtown Association formed an investigation committee. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to go alongside with them. In charge of our investigation at Angel Island is Acting Commissioner Luther Stewart. Quite a man, if you ask me. He was sweating profusely the whole time. He was so nervous when they saw us. When I went into the island, the first thing we saw were the living quarters. The stench. I can never forget that stench. You know what it smells like? Death, desperation, hopelessness, in a morgue. It's crammed, it's dark, it's filthy. The windows are all wired in and covered. You can barely see any lights throughout the day. The acting commissioner, Stewart, informed us that the prisoners are free to go out whenever they want, whenever they like. They can get a breath of fresh air of San Francisco within the island. But after interviewing and talking to quite a lot of detainees, the truth turned out to be very different. They were only allowed to be outside the building once or twice a week for an hour. That is worse than how we treat our prisoners here in this country. Unacceptable. The fire escape doors are jammed. So one can only imagine what would happen if there were to be a fire. Total fatalities. It breaks my heart. My fellow brothers and sisters. Just like you and me, being treated that way. It truly breaks my heart. One of the detainees there, his name is Tum Lung. He's been there for 4 months. And he is a US-born citizen. He was coming back from China after a long trip. And he was there because he could not recall what story of the building he lived on when he lived in San Francisco years ago. Just because of that. He wasn't even an immigrant. And he's been treated like an animal. One of my Chinese business partners, he brought his son over. Young boy, 10, 11. And he went through a 2-hour-long interrogation. And after the interrogation, my friend, my partner, went through a similar process just to reconfirm that everything that poor boy stated were true. They were asking him questions like, "You're not going to believe this." Every single person's name in his village. What story of the building that he lived on, just like Tum Lung. And being provoked, my friend confronted the officer and said, "Do you know how many windows the building you live in have?" Of course he doesn't. The immigration station has been enforcing the Exclusion Act, the Chinese Exclusion Act, to an extent that it has become an extermination. Yes, extermination for Chinese immigrants, my people. Seeing that boy reminds me when I was 14. I came here to this magnificent country. I was on this filthy ship for months. I saw nothing but Pacific Ocean for God knows how many days and nights. I was looking forward to everything here. The people, even the air, the smell of the air, everything. And back then, there weren't as many, there was very little immigration enforcements. This was a free country, per se. And I landed in the Bay of San Francisco. Nobody questioned me. I just walked in, and just like that. I went to school in San Jose, the Bay Area, in Northern California. And almost nobody knew me by my name. I was called Chink, rat eaters, barbarian, by everyone I knew. Hey, Chink, what are you doing there? Go dig me a railroad. Why won't you? People saw me and my country as weak, inferior. If I could tell them now, I would tell them that the China of yesterday is not the China of today. Must we cling on to our preconceived notion that China being immovable? Out of 45 centuries of history, I believe will arise a new nation out of the fog of conservatism and clouds of misunderstanding. I believe that China will become one of the most progressive and mightiest nations in this world. For there's nothing wrong with her except that she is out of step with her environment and out of step with the 20th century. I became a Christian in 1882. That was my refuge. I felt safe. I felt that I could believe in something. And that's what our great nation's about. One nation under God. But ironically, in 1882, that was when the U.S. Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which barred all Chinese laborers from entering this country. An exempt class like myself, merchants, are never allowed to become a naturalized U.S. citizen. They call us immigrants eligible for citizenship. I graduated from the San Francisco Theological Seminary in 1892, and I became assistant pastor at the Chinese Presbyterian Church. And that was when my mission started. In 1894, I moved down to Los Angeles and became a main pastor of the first Chinese Presbyterian church there. And that was when I started my first newspaper as well, first weekly called the Chinese American Weekly. Back then, I used my paper mainly for preaching, to be quite honest. Almost every single one of us, all 3,000 of us, Chinese immigrants, Chinese people in Los Angeles, was reading that paper. We talked about our belief in Christ, our belief for this country, freedom, equality, even though we don't get much. And in 1900, a few really influential and wealthy merchants in San Francisco invited me and funded me to go back up north in San Francisco to start a daily newspaper. And that's when my life's work began. It's called Chonsan Yapol, the daily newspaper of the China and the West. It is a 6-page newspaper daily. We placed the newspaper at $6 a year. Our competitors, 6 other newspapers, granted they were weeklies, they were $5 a year. But I consider that pretty good pricing since we offer 6 times as much news. We talked about domestic politics here in the United States, especially related to our Chinese community. We follow the Chinese Exclusion Act very closely. We talk about what's been going on in China, the revolution, the people looking for a better future, for a change. We cover women's rights. We compare women's treatment in China to the US, and you'd be surprised how much parallel there are. And in 1906, when the great earthquake happened in San Francisco, our paper, raised a lot of money for people and families that lost their loved ones and their homes. And within 6 months our newspaper started, we reached 3,500 subscribers. And now it's all across the world, in Mexico, in Canada, in the Philippines, even Panama, and even back in China. It is the only Chinese daily newspaper outside of China. I'm extremely proud of that. And even with all this progress that we've been making within our community, for our people, people still perceive us badly, even to this day. It's horrendous. If I had a choice of my complexion, I would have picked, I don't know, blue, purple, pink, but I didn't have a choice. Therefore, I'm yellow. But I believe that the complexion of a man doesn't define him. It has been found out that after all our blood is red. And we all have the image of the common Father. And because of that, I started lecturing around the country. West, East, Midwest, even in the South. Started going to YMCAs, lecture halls, to talk about what I know of China, my culture, my people, the customs, our beliefs, the food, everything. Because I want people to see us for who we are, not how we look or our skin colors. And it was very well received. People around the country called me the Chinese Mark Twain, the father of Chinese journalism in the United States, and the list go on. They call me a humorist. They thought I was one of the best lecturers that they've ever seen. But ironically, even though they compare me to that many greats in this country, I still cannot become a U.S. citizen. And we fought hard for that every day. No progress. And I've encouraged my people within my community to appreciate and adapt, assimilate to the US culture. I encourage them to cut off their queues, the long ponytails, and to dress in Western clothing, because I know that by doing so, by putting on a Western image, people will see us more clearly, not just another Chinaman, not just another laundry shop owner. I love this country. I love this country greatly. I owe everything to the United States of America. I love it greatly from the bottom of my heart. It is my second home. It is my home. I just wish that could be the case for all my fellow brothers and sisters that came here, that are being detained in that island, in that prison, in that dungeon. I have the freedom. I'm married to my wife, Chun Fa, in 1892, and we have 4 wonderful, brilliant daughters, Manani, Rose, Caroline, and Effie, and 1 brilliant son, Edward. We had our wedding in both Chinese and Western traditions. It was even reported in the San Francisco Chronicles. All of us here are immigrants. This is a nation of immigrants, after all. Our parents, our grandparents, all came from a different country for a better future, for ourselves, for their children. There's no difference. The Chinese are no difference. We work hard. We're humble. We're kind. We just want a better future like everyone else. We're not stealing anyone's jobs. We're one of the smallest immigrant groups in China, in the United States. We're not stealing anyone's jobs. And that's why this Exclusion Act has to go. It has to. And the condition in Angel Island has to be changed completely. And that's why I'm writing this report. This report will be on my newspaper today. Front page, right in the center. So all my fellow brothers and sisters within my community will see it. And we'll come together. And we'll fight back, just like we've been doing. We will not give up. Strength in numbers. I truly believe in that. There's a proverb in Chinese: if you will, you can. I believe in that all my life, even before I came here. If I will, I can. If we will, we can. This will happen. Sooner or later, this will happen. All right. I have to bring this to my editor as soon as possible so we can put this in my newspaper.